Fundamental story of the Tea Party, and therefore now the Republican Party, is that small government is best because government gets in the way. If only the government would get out of the way, the economy would be unleashed. Congressional Republicans buy into and feed that story in public. But in our fourth story tonight, it turns out that behind closed doors, what they have learned in Washington is that government helps. We all remember how much Senator John McCain hates earmarks, and the stimulus package was passed with a promise of no earmarks. But the Center for Public Integrity reveals today thousands of letters from members of Congress across the country requesting so-called letter marks from the agencies distributing stimulus money. Letter marks, simply letters asking agencies to fund particular projects. Letter marks from dozens of Republicans who claimed publicly the stimulus would not create jobs. Letter marks from Republicans including John McCain. John McCain writing to the Departments of Energy, Transportation, and Commerce, supporting stimulus funding for projects in his state. Of course, McCain was part of old Washington. What about the very first senator swept to power by the Tea Party? In his very first news conference, he said the stimulus had created no new jobs.
The last stimulus bill didn't create one new job. And in some states, the money that was actually released hasn't even been used yet.
It didn't create one new job?
That's correct. We lost, another 85,000 jobs again, give or take, last month. In Massachusetts, it hasn't created one new job, and throughout the country as well. It may have retained some, but it hasn't created any new jobs.
Only 2 months later, Brown asked big government to get in the way of local business with funding for broadband infrastructure. Broadband coverage is essential to the economic well-being and recovery of Western Massachusetts and crucial to help prepare our next generation of entrepreneurs and job creators. What about Brown and McCain's leader in the Senate, Mr. Responsibility, Mitch McConnell?
A stimulus bill that was supposed to be timely, targeted, and temporary turned out to be a liberal wish list instead. Instead of stimulating the economy and keeping unemployment below 8% as promised, we stand here today with nearly 10% unemployment nationwide and many more Americans struggling to find full-time work.
5 letters, not just seeking money, but explaining why stimulus money is so important to Kentucky. To quote from a few, supporting Appalachian railroads has the potential to attract industry, create jobs. Milton, Kentucky, Madison, Indiana, yes, the bridges of Madison, Indiana, replacing this hazardous bridge will improve and preserve these river communities. McCracken County, these necessary improvements will enable Paducah and the region to improve its economy. Except, of course, the Tea Party is running against the Republican leadership, and even Scott Brown was only the Northeast version of a Tea Partier. What about a real Tea Partier? What about the Queen of Tea, Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann? Quoting figures from the Minnesota Department of Transportation, Michelle Bachmann makes a passionate case for big spending by big government to finish a big 40-year effort to rebuild the Trunk Highway 36 bridge over the St. Croix River. The project would directly produce 1,407 new jobs, she writes, per year, while indirectly producing 1,563 a year, a total of 2,970 jobs each year after the project's completion. Numerous jobs in Nevada, Senator Ensign says. A multitude of new jobs. Georgia's Republican senators both say. Senator Jeff Sessions using the phrase long-term economic and environmental benefits in 5 letters. And Lamar Alexander on just one stimulus project, increase job growth and speed up the economic recovery of, what, a town? County? Quote, the tri-state region, Tennessee, Georgia, and Alabama. Let's turn to MSNBC contributor Ezra Klein, also, of course, staff reporter for The Washington Post and a columnist at Newsweek. Good evening, Ezra.
Hi, Keith.
The caricature of the stimulus from the day it was thought of, let alone enacted, was that money only creates jobs by paying people to work. But these are letters, and dozens of them from Republicans, and they're far more than we had room to go into here. And they all suggest that stimulus spending, as Ms. Bachmann said, creates jobs by improving the environment in which businesses, go and do business. It seems somewhat contradictory to their stated position. Is this all correct or some figment of my imagination?
It's like how people don't like Congress but like their congressman. If you could have had a stimulus, there was one stimulus for every congressional district, just passed 435 bills, it would have been a perfect vote. Because that's the basic truth of it, right? There are things that are indirect in stimulus, like tax cuts, but then what these folks want is money for their highway, money for their broadband, money for their bridge. And what that does is it hires private contractors in their towns, and it creates jobs. And then when it's done, those people go out and they spend money, and they create more jobs. There is nothing counterintuitive about stimulus. There is nothing confusing about it. It is only when you call it stimulus, a big, vague mess of a $787 billion bill, that people get confused. But when it gets specific, like in these letters, there's no confusion at all.
And still there is this tightrope for people like Pete Sessions, the congressman, in the statement that he gave to the Center for Public Integrity about his own requests, which he also said they'll create jobs. His statement was, quote, "What I have not done is allow my strong principled objection to the bill to prevent me from asking federal agencies for their full consideration of critical infrastructure and competitive grant projects for North Texas when asked to do so by my constituents." If his strong and principled objection is that these projects will not create jobs, why is he asking for the funding, just so he gets these constituents off his back?
Well, I'd like to see the meeting in which he decides to be honest with the constituents. And they come and they say, listen, the bridge, it's about to fall down and everybody's out of work. And he says, you don't understand. If we build that bridge, that is not going to be built. It won't create jobs. There's really, I mean, this has always been the problem, that by making it stimulus, by making so many things under this one large rubric, it was hard for people in the administration to say what stimulus was doing. This has done tens of thousands of projects. We have done more than 15,000 transportation infrastructure projects alone. 15,000. That number is pretty much nowhere in the debate. You talk to people, they think the money went God knows where. More than 15,000 transportation projects, many of them in districts like Sessions, and these projects needed to be done.
Are we seeing some evidence here that at least when it is concrete and specific and local, that when Republicans hit Washington, D.C., the way they change is that they come to understand that, you know, government, in fact, does have a purpose and can help and does not need to be shrunk to the size of being drowned in the bathtub?
No, coming to understand it and coming to advocate it are two different things. They realize that when it comes down to it, they can't let their local districts, their local constituencies rot. What they are not sort of able to do is marry that to a philosophy that creates a more sort of efficient and effective role for government. And you're seeing this increasingly as the Tea Party's begin to push out people like Bob Bennett and others who were able to be in that middle space a little bit better, a more efficient but not a larger government.
Ezra Klein of the Washington Post and MSNBC. Thank you again, Ezra. Good night.
Thank you.